Um, Nothing really, honestly. I'm a terrible sleeper. Like I'm the world's lightest sleeper, and usually in the morning I am tired and I just want to sleep more or get some sleep. So I'd have to go with the lists of things that I need to do throughout the day are what inspire me to get up. But if you're looking for some like kind of positive, my family inspires me to get up each day type response, I guess I do often try to have something creative and fun throughout the day that I want to do. So I might have my to-do list and it's mixed of things I don't want to do with things that I do want to do. So it forces me to get through the bad things in order to get through the good things, if that makes sense, or get to the good things. So I might have like a video that I want to work on or some writing that I want to do, or I have an idea for something, and that usually gets me going. First story I ever wrote. No, I don't. I remember in, say maybe fourth grade, we had a writing assignment where we had to go down to the little school library, which was just a tiny, even then I remember it being a tiny little space. And we had to kind of find a book on what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I remember choosing a writer and trying to find a book on being a writer for that. I used to write a lot of little plays. So I would get together the kids in the neighborhood, depending on where we were living at the time, or my brothers and sisters, and I would write out these little plays and make everybody kind of put them on. I wrote a lot of kind of takes on fairy tales where I'd twist the fairy tale a little bit. I still kind of write stuff like that. I actually like writing that type of things. And just kind of like kind of weird, not really weird, but more fairy tale-ish. I do remember one, it involved like a bird, and I remember writing that on my grandmother's typewriter because she had a typewriter. I wish my family's assholes. My family's a bunch of assholes. I'm just saying this into the camera because they didn't save anything. They didn't save any of the stuff that I used to write and do when I was a kid, which is kind of prick moves. Especially, come on, Grandma, you should have saved everything. She did save a lot, but I don't think she saved any of that stuff. All right, well, that's it. So no, I don't remember the first story I ever wrote. My writing process. I don't. I don't really have. I don't do outlines really with the books I published. I had a structure in mind in the sense of like I knew what I wanted to include and I knew the sections for those. So I would write each section, and then after I wrote them, I would look at the order to make sure they kind of flowed correctly, and then I would go back and write. For me, I write better in coffee shops. I'm one of those kind of writers, or some place like that, because at home, I can't write at home. I'm too easily distracted at home. I will watch TV, I will clean the house. I'm definitely one of those people where like if I'm at home, I'm like, oh, that needs to be picked up. So I'll sit down in a coffee shop with coffee and I'll start writing and kind of tune out everything around me. That's probably my writing process, and it's much more just kind of free flowing. I wrote a couple scripts, and a girl that I wrote a couple shorts with, it's kind of the same thing. We sat down at a pub, grabbed a couple pints, and we just kind of like, we had our characters and we're like, okay, where are we going to take these characters? So it was a lot of fun writing with her because we bounced ideas off of each other and had a similar writing style. But that's pretty much it. I'm not a heavily structured writer. I don't do the notepads out and that kind of stuff. I usually just throw it all out there, and then when I go to my second draft, I start looking at how I want to organize it, and then from there, rewriting and rewriting. Where did I grow up? I grew up in kind of a combination, I'd say, Spokane and Seattle. I was born in Spokane, Washington, which is about 300 miles east of Seattle, Washington, so the very Pacific Northwest. And absolutely, they influenced my writing. My book, How to Manage Your Manager, was influenced by my jobs in Seattle, numerous careers that I've kind of gone through. And my Irish book, obviously, from that I live in Ireland right now, even with my fiction writing, I take a lot from my personal experiences and put in there. I think most writers do. That's very common, and it's kind of easy to embellish upon actual experiences. The next book that I hope to publish is going to be a series of essays based on personal experiences. So I probably, yeah, very heavily am influenced by where I was born, raised, lived, people around me, all that kind of stuff. That's hard because I have favorite books like 1984 by George Orwell. So I guess I could say George Orwell. I mean, I liked Animal Farm. I like 1984. I'm a huge Jack Kerouac fan. One of the short stories that I published is very Kerouacian. I just kind of like the way he takes from his life, creates his stories around it. He kind of has this adventurous mentality that I can relate to. Huge fan of his. Somebody actually wrote a review and compared that short story to him, which is probably one of the best compliments I could have got. Huge fan of his books. Hunter S. Thompson, I'm also a big fan of his. And I really like The Rum Diaries, which is like his only actual novel that he's written, in the sense of like, structured story versus the rest of his stuff, which is kind of based on kind of his gonzo news style thing. Chuck Palahniuk, also a big fan of his. So I guess maybe like some darker stuff. Chuck Palahniuk is good. And Irvine Welsh along the same lines, both great authors in my opinion, and pretty much anything I've ever read from either of them is fantastic, especially Irvine Welsh because he writes with that accent. So he's a very challenging book. His books are very challenging to read, which is kind of interesting. And Chuck Palahniuk, he's from Portland, which is right down the street from Seattle. I should probably say Stephen King. I don't really think of him as like a favorite author, but when I think about it, I've read a lot of Stephen King books, and so I guess that makes him on the list. But you don't really think of him that way, I guess. Maybe just because he has so much out there, he's so well known, he's so popular that as like an author, you don't want to be a Stephen King fan. You got to pick some indie whatever in order to be considered legit.